Welcome to Courtside Conversation. I'm your girl, Allie Love. After years on the hardwood as the in-arena host for the Brooklyn Nets, it's time for me to take it courtside. We're here with artists, athletes, and all of our favorite people to break down the game called life. We're getting real about the grow up and the glow up. So let's take a seat. Our next guest is more than just a radio personality. This female powerhouse is a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, and a host. Raised in Brooklyn, she has received wide recognition for her work, including receiving the Gracie Award for the Alliance for Women in Media and being inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame, along with her co-hosts, for her widely successful morning show, The Breakfast Club. She even has her own designated day in New York City. We talk coffee, saving your money to buy a house, and much more. Let's take it courtside with Angela Yee. Angela Yee, my girl, I am so thrilled to have this conversation with you, to welcome you to Courtside Conversation. It is long overdue. So let me just give you a quick rundown of how this is going to operate. There are 4 quarters in a game. We got 4 quarters and a halftime today. And we're going to throw it back. We're going to bring it forward. And we're going to walk away with the W. Are you good with that?
I'm good with that.
All right. So in terms of taking it courtside to this conversation, I always like to start from the beginning. I think giving insight and throwing it back to exactly how we got to where we are is the information that most people don't have access to. And when we think about a game, when we think about the game of life, it's always how we shift our mindset and how we apply ourselves that yields the greatest outcome or the highest output that's aligned with our goals. And so thinking in that capacity, let's throw back to your formative years. Was hosting always in your blood? Did you always know you wanted to be a correspondent, a host, a VJ, like someone who was just in the seat, hot seat, asking the questions, having the conversations?
Not at all. I really always was more of a behind the scenes person. And so when I went to school, I really thought I would be a writer. At one point, I wanted to be a teacher. And so for myself, even when I first started doing radio, I remember Paul Rosenberg, Eminem's manager, he was like, "Are you going to be okay with talking? I know you're not really like that type of person that wants to be out there." I actually had written different articles and I was doing some journalism and I was writing bios for artists. So I was always more behind the scenes. And even when I started radio, that still was kind of a behind the scenes job as far as you weren't out there like that. Like people didn't know what I looked like for a long time just because it wasn't so visual. Like today, everything is, Instagram and they want to see your pictures and people are on TikTok and they're filming things and putting it out. And so I think what changed that for me was like when World Star started getting popular. Mm-hmm. And then people started seeing videos of, I had like my lip service at Sirius or like my interviews that I would do. And then those would get picked up on World Star. So that's when people started feeling like they cared more about visuals. And Ustream was out. That was like the original, when people would stream themselves, it was this thing called Ustream. So I would Ustream sometimes when I was at work. And I would be at work like literally in my pajamas, no makeup, hair not done, because that's how you could show up to radio. And now it's like, it's a whole different day and age.
Ooh, it's a new day and age. But one of where our worlds collide is as the host of the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, growing up in Brooklyn, I mean, sometimes, and I can only think about my childhood, I didn't know the opportunity sets that were available for me or to me. For example, I didn't know that I can carve out a space and create my own career. I only knew what I knew, and my extent of information came from my family. Tell us and give us a little insight of your childhood growing up in Brooklyn and what that looked like for you.
And even before I say that, I have to say you definitely have created an amazing space for yourself just to see everything that you've done. Me being introduced to you just working at the Barclays and for the Nets and then seeing everything you've managed to do from that. I'm like, first of all, I got to get into these Peloton classes. So I think that's amazing though. So I just want to say that for you first and foremost. And
thank you.
But yeah, for my family, I mean, my mom has had the same job since I was a kid. She works for New York City Transit Authority, and that's where she's always worked. And then my dad was more like a bounce around person. He worked for like AT&T, and then he worked for like a bunch of different phone companies. And now he works with my uncle, who's a dentist, and he manages a dentist office. And so it wasn't really for me growing up about entrepreneurship, but I will say that my grandfather, he's from the Caribbean. And that mindset is always save your money, buy a house. And he used to say that to me so much when I was growing up. If I did anything like went to the store and got a piece of gum, he'd be like, save your money, buy a house. I'm like, can I get a piece of gum? So everything that was always ingrained in me from when I was young, that you have to save your money and buy a house. And so even the house that we lived in growing up in Flatbush, it was a 2-family house. My grandparents owned it. So I always did see that. And then when they moved back to Montserrat, they gave the house to my mom and my dad, for us. And so it's so nice to see that they were able to pass something down to my parents, who then they ended up later on selling the house and moving to Jersey. But even having that is a huge deal.
I think owning anything is a huge deal, especially like coming from where we come from. In terms of like that childhood, the kind of the hallmark that you mentioned is like save your money, buy a house. Were there any of those moments that you can recall potentially in like those formative years, maybe middle school or high school, that you adopted yourself, maybe that you didn't get from your family? For example, when I was growing up, one of the things that I used to tell myself is everybody's scared. Even if I didn't know if that was true, I just remember, becoming a dancer. I knew I wanted to be a dancer after I got hit by a car at a young age. And you would go into these auditions and I'm like 13 years old and 15 years old, just nervous out of my pants here. And I would tell myself, everyone is scared. And I feel like that saying or that mantra, even though I didn't know that's what it was, a mantra at such a young age, but kind of like that mantra that I held close to my heart actually pushed me to a position where when I came to New York for school and I got accepted to do Alvin Ailey, I was like, everyone's scared. And it's still something that I say today. I'm like, everybody's scared. I just got to get out there and do it. Did you have any of those that kind of carried you through into this adult life?
It's funny when you talk about fear. When I was younger, I feel like I was a lot more fearless. Like I wasn't really scared to do things. As I got older, I feel like we kind of get more in our heads about things. And then I get more scared now to mess up than I did when I was younger. But I did used to tell myself that everybody makes mistakes because that's something that's a part of life. And it's also something you have to own. I think a lot of times people make mistakes and they try to act like they didn't and just keep it moving and not acknowledge it. But I had to learn from when I was young, it's okay to mess up and to acknowledge it is part of being a human being. And so that was something I used to always tell myself, everybody makes mistakes and it'll all be over soon. Nothing lasts permanently. So sometimes, like even now, if I have to get up in front of people and speak, because I still don't really like having to speak in front of people. I get nervous.
Wait, are you serious? Like you do this basically every day and you still get nervous at times?
Well, I don't talk in front of people every day with them looking at me. It's different.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So that's always been kind of harder for me. And it's also harder for me to talk and not have anybody to talk to. You know how sometimes you have to get up and like give a speech? Mm-hmm. And so I just had to do that the other day. I feel like it was so horrible. I was at my college and it was reunion weekend. And it was, they gave me the Distinguished Alumni Award. And so it's like several people that get it, but a lot of like Lin-Manuel Miranda was there who wrote and did Hamilton. He was in the audience because one of the guys that he works with, we all went to the same college, was getting the award also. And my parents came and, some of my friends came. And I had wrote this whole speech and I was like, man, it doesn't even feel right anymore. And so I kind of just winged it and, everybody's like, it's really good, but you tell yourself it was really bad. And I was so nervous the whole time that I was doing it. And I was like, feel like I was just flustered and all over the place. And it's just something that is still hard for me. But I always tell myself, well, this is only going to last 15 minutes and then it's over and I can move on with my life. And things that are a big deal to me might not be a big deal to anyone else. Like it can feel like the end of the world when something happens for me, but everybody else is like, they don't really care that much.
You mean in that moment? You mean like, when you're getting up there, that anticipation or that anxiety is like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the worst things that are about to happen. And you're just trying to get through it.
And everything, like sometimes we have a bad day or we make a mistake or even after the speech, I'm like, that was awful. Even if everyone's telling you how good it was. Yes. But it's also like, to me, I might think about it for like the whole day, but no one else is thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be fair, if Lin-Manuel Miranda was in any audience, I would be nervous as well because I'm like the biggest Hamilton fan and now Encanto fan. And I was at the J-Lo premiere last week and I saw him across the like auditorium And I like looked at him and he looked at me. And it was one of those things where you don't know if a person knows you. Like, I'm not Angela Yee. Like, people aren't just like, oh, that's Angela. And you know that they know you. You know, as a Peloton instructor, it's great. Like, people do know us, but I don't know if they really, really know us, right? So I'm like looking at him, he's looking at me, and then he like lifts his hands up to wave. So, you know, I give the check around, like, is there someone behind me? And it was no one there. I was against the wall. So I waved back, and that was like my moment. I was already sweating in that moment, so I cannot imagine. So I'll give you props, because it's not easy speaking in front of people who write and listen keenly for a living. Like, that is hard. And you do it.
I was going to say, I bet you had some freak out moments where people that you would never think would know you, though, because Peloton has such a huge following and all different kinds of people. So I'm sure you've been places and they've been like, oh my God.
You know what I do, and it's a way to, I will say I try to always stay humble in my career, but mindfully humble is I will always reintroduce myself. And even if they say like, oh, I know you, or they say my name, I will always re-say my name just to make sure that I didn't get it wrong, or I heard my name, or do they really know me, or do they think I'm someone else? Just because I do get surprised. It's like almost a shock. Do you think our membership base is so broad and so vast in terms of somebody that lives clear across the world or somebody that lives right down the street, and you're just like, oh my God, this person knows who I am. So I always say, thank you so much. I'm Allie Love. Like, what's your name? Just to make sure they didn't get it wrong. They thought I was somebody else.
No, they know you, girl.
No. But no, let's keep talking about this, because the reason is I've followed you for a while. And I remember our first time meeting. I don't think you're going to remember this, but as we step into the second quarter and talking about really what defined and shaped your career and continues to do so, I remember it was probably like my third or fourth season at the Brooklynettes. And I'd never hosted or done anything in terms of public speaking before this role. 2012, in the middle of the season, like December, I walk on the court and they had already had a host, but they, were looking for a new host. I walk on the court. I went from speaking one-on-one in my room to my friends to 18,000 fans. And I was terrible at it, let's be honest. So shout out to the Brooklynettes for giving me an opportunity to grow up until this point. Like, this is a big deal. But it was actually 3 or 4 seasons in, and they're like, you're going to meet Angela Yee. Like, it was in the middle of the game. You're going to meet Angela Yee and you're going to introduce her.
I remember
Girl. I was so nervous to meet you because I have so much deep respect for what you do and who you are and how much you've grown. And then I was even much more nervous to introduce you because it's like, what if I get it wrong? Like, what if I say something? Like, what if I just mess up? And everybody in the arena knows who you are. So it's like they're listening. But I just remember one of those moments in my life. It those moments shape your career because it's through the nerves. When you push through the nerves, when you push through that anxiety, especially public speaking, you're better for it. It's memorable. And so in terms of like having some of those moments of struggle or those moments of sweaty armpits like I did, how do you encounter that? You interview and get introduced to so many incredible people. How do you handle it?
I think preparation is always important. And like you just said, right, you get nervous. You're like, what if I mess up? And I remember, because I do remember that was my first time meeting you and because I get nervous having to get up in front of people. I never assumed that like these fans are all going to know me. What if she introduces me and then it's mad quiet, So, and you were very professional. So I thought it was very smooth. I would never have been able to tell that. But for myself, preparation is important because you don't want to mess up, right? Like, you want to make sure you say the person's name right, you introduce them properly. And as far as interviews, that you have good follow-up. And part of that is you can have a list of questions that somebody hands you, but actually doing the research yourself helps me a lot, because that way, I never trust that people do the research right. Ooh. And so, because there's been times that people might hand you something and there's something wrong on there, and that will just set the tone wrong. So even if I'll take those questions, I make sure that I also have done my own research so that I could be like, oh no, that's wrong. And that's happened to me so many times, because a lot of times at work, it's like, we have different interns that come in and out, and other people don't research like you do. And sometimes people just get wrong information. There's wrong stuff on Wikipedia. I hate when people just look on Wikipedia and are just like, this is all the questions, And so I think that it's important to just prepare yourself, do the research. If it's a book, try to at least read some of it. If it's, a TV show, make sure you watch and familiarize yourself with it. Even if it's hard for me sometimes, I was just thinking about like even these past couple of days, all the things that I've had to do, like today we had Kirk Franklin on. He has a new album
Mm-hmm.
coming out Friday. They sent it to us yesterday. So now I'm trying to make sure I listen to that. So I familiarize myself with that. But then we have Ben Crump on. He has a Netflix documentary that's coming out this weekend on Juneteenth. I want to make sure that I watch the documentary because I want to be respectful of the work that he does. But then at the same time, on my podcast, I had, Uncle Clifford and Mercedes from P Valley on the show. So now I got to make sure I watch, the first 2 episodes of it's so many different things. And this is all happening in the span of 2 days. And so even trying to prep for what it is that I'm doing, I always try to make sure I'm at least pulling from different places and doing the best that I can, because I never want anyone to feel uncomfortable. And that's when things don't go right, when you're not prepared. I hate when people are just so what you got going on? That's never a good feeling to somebody who's being interviewed, because then you feel like this person didn't even do any research,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the most important thing, to feel more comfortable, is to at least have done some research, have some good questions that you want to ask. And that way, if things stray off in a different direction, you can be more conversational because you've done the work.
Speaking of doing the work, let's take that work internal, because you are, and I don't like to use the word balance as much because I don't think we balance things. Everybody sometimes has a lot of balls in the air. How do you find harmony in protecting your peace? So like you said, you've had a full 2 days and you want to show up prepared because that's your love language, which is awesome. I love language. You want to be prepared. You want to do your job well. That's the way you show mutual respect. But how do you take care of yourself, knowing that there's a list of content that you need to consume, that you need to also prep, that you need to look good? Like you said, the day and age is not just audio only. Now it's an audio visual component. So there's multiple layers to this. How do you protect your peace, and how have you done so over a long career in terms of making time for yourself?
I do try to balance things out. I know these past, even last week, I was in the span of 5 days, I was in DC, then I was in Atlanta, then I was in Orlando, all different things, working. And so I make sure that I haven't had a day off, in maybe the past 12 days, but on Friday, I just cleared my whole schedule. So after work, I know I don't have to do anything. And then Monday is a holiday for us. So I know I have Monday free. So I always like to give myself things to look forward to. So that might mean we have the week of the 4th of July off. I'm definitely going to try to do something, go somewhere or go away. Sometimes it's hard to even do that because, you have so much work and you feel guilty. Should I be leaving and taking care of myself? But that's important if you want to be able to keep going, because you'll get burnt out. There's times that I just feel burnt out where I'm I'll come home and sit on the couch and know I have to do something in an hour, and I just have to just sit on the couch doing absolutely nothing until it's time to go again, because I just feel burnt. But you have to acknowledge that about yourself and know all right, I'm going to get a facial on Monday and I'm scheduling that right now because I need that, and it's going to be an hour of peace and my pores will look better for it.
And my pores will look better for it. Is that kind of your self-care thing? Are you traditional self-care, massage, facials, getting some of that physical attention? Or are there other things that you do that are a little more mindful? Because mindset in terms of game time is always so different. When you're on, you're on. Your mindset is going to be a bit different than when it's time to go off.
I think I love doing yoga. I haven't even been doing it that much lately, and I need to start doing it at home more, just because when I have a chance to go do a class, it's so good for me. It's hard for me to focus and do it at home because I said, I just sit on the couch and not move. But that's good. I like to run. I love going running in Prospect Park. That is a big thing for me. So whenever I have a chance, I already was okay, so Friday, I'm definitely going to go for a run, and then I'm going to do this. Another thing I love to do, I don't really love to do it, but it helps me, is clean my house. And I am because I feel so disorganized if my house is messy. And so, one thing that if I'm home and I know I'll be home, if I can clean my house, and it's not it's fun, but I just appreciate the results of having a clean house.
I agree. I don't love organizing and cleaning the house, but I do know, you know what it is? It's not that I don't love it. It's just that it's once in a while you get that itch, and then you just be in the zone. You be in the cleaning zone and your house is clean. Your life feels in order. You just feel like you got it all together when you're finished. It's just that zone is very rare. It's far few in between.
Right.
And
it's so
you can't
hard
just
to do.
yield it. Yeah, you can't yield it. I can't just wield the zone to happen for cleaning. I got to actually sometimes you just got to do it. Speaking of things you just got to do, struggle. We talk about this a lot in Courtside conversation, because the guests that come on, whether, they're artists, they're athletes, or like you, some of our favorite people who we listen to, who we consume, who we respect, sometimes it's all really shiny on Instagram, or, everything sounds so good or looks so good when it's on a social platform or when it's out there. But what I think helps folks is when we get real, right? Courtside conversation is about real people connecting and really focusing on that mindset. And one of the things that I do think unifies all of us is at some capacity we have dealt with, are dealing with, and continue to deal with struggle. How do you define struggle?
So for me, struggle is, you know what? There's times that I just be like, I want to just cry. And that's hard, for me. I think being an entrepreneur is a struggle. And I know people throw that word around a lot. Entrepreneurship is so important. It's amazing. It's great. You make your own schedule. You're working for yourself. But that's a struggle every single day. Like, one reason I can't ever even relax is because I have different businesses and there's always something going wrong. Like, I guarantee you, when we finish this and I look at my phone, there's going to be at least 8 text messages. I promise you, like, nonstop. It doesn't matter if I'm on the air, if I'm away, if I'm with my parents. It's always something going on. And sometimes that could be really, really overwhelming. And so, and then also not making money from your businesses. You go through periods where you just hope you do eventually make some money. I started a coffee business. I haven't made money from it, and I've invested a lot. And so it hasn't been that long yet. And I understand that. Like, I have a lot of patience. So I know that while something might not work now, I'm looking forward to 5 years from now when I can say, okay, we have a whole franchise business that is doing well. And I don't ever expect anything to happen for me right away, but it's so much work and I'm really hands-on and involved. Like, I put up my own money. I know all my employees. I go there when I do payroll, like I do everything, and it's not easy. And a lot of times, it might be payroll coming out of your own pocket because you didn't meet your goals for the week or because something unexpected happened. I mean, even, during the pandemic, I was on the air one day and somebody broke into the juice bar the night before and they called me like, oh my God. So then I had to be like, I gotta go, guys. And like, just get off the air, run over there, get somebody to come and fix the glass, clean it up. They stole the cash register. Now I'm doing police reports. It's just, something that you can't even really ever feel like, okay, I could just relax because I might be off from this thing, but then I also got this thing to take care of. So I think that's probably the hardest part, is that you're never really 100% at peace because there's so much going on. But a lot of what you do is trying to lay down the groundwork so one day it won't be like that.
You're building that legacy, and sometimes that struggle is what helps define that legacy and establish that narrative. You spoke of, so you're owner of Juice for Life, which is your juice bar in Bed-Stuy. You also have the coffee shop, Coffee Uplifts People Coffee Shop, also in Bed-Stuy.
Yes.
You're also the owner of We the Well Read. It's a Black-owned health and nutrition business that serves the community and supports Brooklyn. Obviously, yes, we know one of the hosts of Power 105.1 Breakfast Club. But I wanted to get back to when you were talking about the coffee shop. Why coffee? Like, it usually businesses come from have a story, right? Whether it's something you grew up with, something that you think is lucrative. You're like, I'm going to invest because I think this is going to have a great return. But when it comes to you, you are very thoughtful around the ventures you pursue, who you're around, what you say. You're very strategic in that, which is, again, attributes to who you are and why you're so good at what you do. But I remember listening to your story, but I want to hear more about, like, coffee uplifts people.
Well, first of all, to be honest, I was not a coffee drinker until a couple of years ago. And so it was something that I always had the relationship with, like, oh, coffee's nasty. And like, my mom would drink coffee every morning and breathe in my face. And I hated the way it smelled. You'd be like, get out of here, And so I never had like good connotations. And I think I was programmed to think that coffee just really wasn't good for you. And so after doing some research, I found out a lot of things about coffee that I didn't know. And then I was able to really experiment with it. And see, the history of coffee was first and foremost important to me just because it was discovered in Ethiopia. And it's something that I feel like was taken from Black people. And we're not as involved in the business as we should be at all, not by a long stretch. Even who they market coffee to, it's never to us, even though it is something that, like, in Ethiopia, like over 90% of the population drinks coffee every day. and they have these whole coffee ceremonies. And so for me, even if you go to Jamaica, like they have amazing coffee. In Haiti, they have it in Guyana and all these Black and brown places. And so we should be a lot more involved and profit off of it, because even just the whole way that like they take advantage of people who work and they actually pick the beans and all of that, it's like a whole thing. So I want to make sure that I get more involved in that whole process. And so, and importing, exporting, and just knowing what's going on with that. So I've been having some amazing meetings about that. But the benefits of coffee too, just to your health, right? Like it helps prevent Parkinson's and type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's. There's all these different studies about how, coffee can improve your health. And that's also if you're not adding like a lot of sugar and a lot of cream and things like that to it. And so that was fascinating to me too, because I don't hear that enough, right? About the benefits of drinking coffee. For some people, it's also an appetite suppressant, and it also definitely gives you energy. And so after learning all of those things, and then also seeing the value of coffee shops, of all the business that gets done in a coffee shop, all of the meetings that can happen there. A lot of people are working from home now. Maybe they want to leave the house and go to a nice coffee shop. And so for me, I just wanted to build something in Bed-Stuy, in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, that I felt like was beautiful, that was a great hangout space, that also has some history to it. And so that's how the coffee business came about. It was definitely very intentional for me of why I chose that.
I don't even want to say that I love this story. I know my assistant, Danya, who's sitting over here while we record, loves this story because I give her so much. She drinks so much coffee. Like she's a daily coffee drinker. She's like, I can tell you right now, she's probably already Googled like, yep, gonna go to the coffee shop. She is always trying to, I'm not a coffee drinker. I appreciate the, and that's why I said I wanted to share this story, because the point of it is a diversification, right? Like what I like is what I like, and what I don't like is what I don't like. But I love this story because I do think it's reclaiming agency, right? A business that reclaims agency. What I mean by that is you're creating a narrative and reclaiming agency because you saw something, you saw a space, and you said, I can be a Black-owned woman, business owner in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, give back to the community, but also reclaim that narrative of this is what coffee means, this is where it comes from, and this is who it's for real. And so I think that of the businesses, for me, that story, while I am not a coffee drinker, I'm sold on it. And I love the energy behind it because I'm all about reclaiming that agency and rewriting the story and telling a narrative that's honest and pure. And so
I can't wait to give you some coffee, girl.
Oh my God. Ooh, you don't even, let me tell all y'all that are listening, you don't want to see Ali Love on coffee. I tried it once in college. It is a sight to behold. Like it is, I have natural energy. My energy, I don't drink coffee. I don't have like the energy drinker, Red Bull. I don't even know. Like,
I don't do any of that.
Yes, I don't have stimulants. I don't drink sodas. I have that natural annoying energy, the energy that when you work with me, I email you at 6 a.m. Yeah, destiny. But
So you don't get tired ever? Come on.
I do get tired, but you know what it is? I have a radical sleep like routine. I go to bed at 9:03 unless I'm working. Obviously, we got Nets games and some things happen at night. But if we're home, like if I don't have a dinner or an event or work in the evenings, on my evenings at home, I'm not just up lollygagging watching TV. You
go to sleep.
Ooh, 9:03. My body tells me it's 9 o'clock. I go to sleep. I don't fight it. I ride the wave. And when the body says get up, usually I'm, again, annoying. I get up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, or 4:30, to be honest. Again, super annoying. I ride the wave. I get up when the body says get up. I'm not like, let me take an extra nap or like lay down longer.
But you're going to see, because, the darker the roast, the less caffeine in the coffee. So the lighter roast actually have more caffeine. The darker roast has less. So I think that also matters too. That's what I'm saying. Like for me, when I do something, it is an education process, because I also feel like a lot of people don't know. Sometimes like people just do like the regular K-cup, and that's not going to be the best coffee for you anyway. But when you have like a fresh...
What's that? It sounds like
that's
a drug.
The one where you just put it in the machine and then it makes it. But instead of like the real whole bean, because the way that I have it at home is like I have the whole beans, then I have the grinder, and then it's a whole process. But it definitely tastes better. And the only thing I put in it is oat milk, and so it tastes good. And I have chocolate oat milk too, so it actually ends up tasting good. But there's all different kinds, so you never know. But we're going to try it with you.
Oh God, y'all better get y'all videos ready. It will be a sight to behold. See, this is why Courtside Conversation is like digging deeper into the things that we don't always read about or that we don't always hear. But I want to step into halftime. Halftime's always fun. It's entertaining. We're already talking about energy. We're talking about coffee, and I'm already wired. I'd love to do even it's rapid fire, but I always call it fire rapid, and then ask you some funny questions. Okay. Now with the rapid fire, you gotta tell me quickly. You can't be thinking about it. Okay. First one. Here we go. Music radio or talk radio?
Music radio.
Running or red carpet?
Running.
Interviewing or being interviewed?
Interviewing.
Book or audiobook?
Book.
Ooh. Okay. Sing or dance?
Sing.
Ooh, we got to talk about this later. Sneakers or heels?
Sneakers.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
And last one, night in or night out?
Night in.
Ooh, she's night in with the book. With her.
My answers are so boring. No,
that's good. I love it. You're like, I'll go running. I'll stay on the couch. I'll read my book.
I'm like 85 years old.
No, but I love you for reading a book. Look at that. I don't think I know anyone who still reads a book. No, people do.
Look, they read I have a whole library behind me. You see it?
You do. I do see it.
Look at that. Look at that.
I feel like reading a book is a luxury I can't afford. I am a huge Audible person. I listen to all audiobooks because I just feel like, that cleaning book that we talked about, I'll put it on and I'll just like listen to a whole book and clean the whole house. But now like your hashtag goals.
I love to touch a book. I think books are like artwork to me. And so I love like to have like a beautiful book. I was just looking at this author, Jessa Nabango. She has this book out that she did with National Geographic. She's a Black woman. She went to every single country in the world, 195 countries that she visited. The Catch Me If You Can. The book is so beautiful because her pictures and her, all the different places that she's been to. And I do love Audible, but I will say like there's something to be said for being able like that. You can't get that experience if you're not like, flipping through the pages of the book and seeing it. And I'm like a speed reader. I was an English major in college, right?
Oh, and so, see, the secrets come out, y'all. Over here have me feeling bad about myself, but you got some special superpowers. That's what it is.
Now I read so fast and it's good because I'm always working and doing things. So I know you can speed up, the reading. I remember we were, before we interviewed President Obama, I was trying to read I was in the car driving to DC listening to an audiobook. I was like, this is happening too slow for me because I just read so fast that it's easier for me and I retain information better that way for some reason. So, I always love a book.
I did read Obama's book and I had to speed it up 2.0 and he sounded like he was talking normal. He was the fastest I've ever listened. The book is like 700 something pages, not the fastest in duration, the fastest in speed that I've ever listened to someone talk. And it seemed like he was talking, I talk fast, but it seemed like he was talking normal, but it was still good. Still good.
Yeah, it was good. I was like, it's going to take me a month to listen to this audiobook.
It's like 29 hours. I was looking at it the other day. It's 29 hours if you listen to it on speed. Yes. That's a lifetime. Okay. Biggest pet peeve. What's one of your biggest pet peeves?
One of my biggest pet peeves, man, I have so many. I'm so anal. I'm trying to think of what I would say the biggest one is.
Wait, you have so many? Really?
Yeah, I do. Because I have like a lot of little pet peeves. I'm like very controlling.
Tell me more. Please say more.
I mean, I guess like people will tell you, I'm kind of OCD. Like if you come over my house and like, things are out of order, I'm always like behind you, like putting things back where they're supposed to be. So I don't like people who are like, don't clean up after themselves. I guess that would be a pet peeve. That's probably my biggest one. For some reason, like things like that bother me. I'm trying to think what else. People who are late all the time. That's a pet peeve too. Because I always feel like being late is so disrespectful to everybody else's time. It's okay every now and then, but somebody who there's people you're like, all right, well, I'm going to tell them to get there at 7:30 because it's really at 8. I don't like that. Like, I want you to be on time. I hate having to wait because I'm always in a rush to go places and my schedule is so busy. I don't like when people throw me off.
No, I think being on time is a sign of respect. I think it goes
Yeah.
back to being prepared. It's a sign of respect. And it's fine, to your point. Like, you have once in a while, people are just naturally late. We live in New York City, and if you take the train, at some point, something's bound to happen. Or even if you're in a car, like, at some point, something's bound to happen. But it's like that inconsistency or that consistency with being tardy. You're just like, you're not invited to the party anymore. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, another one. Okay, since you know me now. But when people send emails and they don't like spell check or grammar check and it's all over the place and it's a mess, I don't like that. Like, please proofread. And I get it. Like, sometimes we send things and it's not 100% right, but like, do proofread your email, especially if you're asking for something that is on a professional level. Like, if you want to get a job, and you're sending an email and it's not like, because if I'm asking for something or like sending a proposal, I send it to myself first and I read it over, make sure it looks right. And then like, if it's something really important, if you're emailing your friend, no big deal. But if it's like really important, make sure that you're on point.
I have a similar, and this is a great segue into the third quarter, but I have a similar thing is that I don't like when people spell my name wrong in an email. And it just reminds me of Steph Curry when they like, one brand spelled his name wrong and he went with a different brand. That's the word on the street, one of the stories. But I totally relate because I find that you didn't prepare. Once again, comes back to preparation. And you're trying to like collaborate with me or work with me or have a conversation, but you just spelled Allie, Allie. And I'm like, no, it's Allly. Four letters, you know what I mean? Just like, that's it. Just 4 letters, that's it.
I got Angela Lee a lot, Angela Lee, are you available? I'm like, okay.
Oh, do you go in and correct them? Like, do you write
usually I just don't respond. I just be like,
oh, there you go. You just get the trash. So y'all out there, if y'all trying to work with her, she said, make sure you get my name right or you going to get in the trash. Delete. But as we step into the third quarter, let's talk about success, the metric for success in our professional endeavors. How would you define the metric for success? Because, I mean, there are moments I can tell you that as entrepreneur, maybe you feel similar, that you just feel accomplished. You're like, oh my gosh, I did that. That felt great, right? Certain interviews that you discuss, like, that felt great. I accomplished something. And then there are moments where you just feel like nothing is ever right. Or it's just, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to be as good as I could be. But in those moments, how do you reconcile between those two? How do you identify and establish a personal metric for success?
I think the best metric for success is how many people you're able to help, right? Because I think you feel the most successful when somebody that came up under you or that you took under your wing is successful, because then that makes you feel like that's like what a real legacy is. And that's what really is successful, how much you impact other people's lives. I was thinking about this, like when Michael K. Williams passed, or even just recently when Trouble passed, and how many people were like, what a great person he was. And interactions like, especially with Michael K. Williams, that had nothing to do with him being an actor, nothing to do with those things, but all about him being a human being and the things that he's done as a philanthropist to help his community. To me, that's like success. And what I want to be able to do is, yes, of course, like I want to be successful and make money in that way. But part of wanting to do that is because you want to be able to help other people. And so if I can be successful, if I can, turn this coffee shop into a franchise and then help other people become franchise owners at a really low cost, and then they can become successful and, make money to support their family and buy homes and pass that down. Like, that's how you really measure success, how much of an impact what you've done and what you've created impacts other people in a positive way.
Do you ever take a moment to recognize the impact that you have on the community in terms of what you do for the morning show?
I think that, I love when I do that segment, Ask Ye, and when I see people or they follow up with me and they tell me how much it meant to them, like the advice that I gave, even if it's advice I gave someone else and they were listening and they were like, oh my God, when I heard you say that, and there's like real things that happen on that segment. I have a friend who is a therapist. And if it's something that is above me, I'm like, okay, let me link you with Dr. Jasper and you can talk to him. And like, there was one guy that literally was like, I'm going to kill myself. I was on probation and I got in trouble again and I'm going to go to jail and I'm not going to jail. I'm killing myself. And so I was like, okay, this is definitely above me. I linked them, and he was really able to help him not go to jail, talk to the assistant district attorney, where he lives, and help him like get past everything and find a solution. And they still keep in contact. They flew out there to see him, and like things
Wow.
like that is a real way that you can see how much what you do can help somebody, even if it's something small like me talking about taxes and things that you can do. And somebody's like, girl, I'm so glad you said it on the radio. That helped me, financially, or whatever it is. Somebody might have a book coming out and they come on the show, or a listener might call in and promote their book and it shoots up, on the bestsellers list or whatever. Anything like that makes a big difference in somebody's life. Like, yes, we definitely do have an impact, and I appreciate it and I'm grateful for it.
I love that story. Do you ever have moments where you are lost for words on the radio?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a really tough time, especially during this pandemic with so many things happening and a lot of suffering. And so when we interviewed, Angie Martinez and I interviewed Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, and that was really difficult because and watching Ben Crump's documentary, it also makes you realize the amazing work that he does as a civil rights attorney, just to be able to help coach people through what it is that they need to do, because there is certain things that you have to do. It's not like it's fake. It's just in order for you to get attention from the media to have something done about an injustice that was done to you, the family is going to have to speak, and there are going to have to be rallies, and there is going to have to be media attention, and there is going to have to be interviews that you have to do. And you are going to have to showcase, because, they'll show a person that gets killed by the police in a negative light to make the public not have much sympathy for that person. And so you are going to have to show, okay, he was a great person. This is what he did. This is what he did for people. Here's this picture. There's certain things. And watching that documentary really made me realize it. And there's been so many times when, the news can be really depressing sometimes when you see everything that's going on in the world. And so sometimes it is hard for me to like make it through certain stories, talking about Uvalde, Texas, and the kids, and Buffalo, New York, and innocent people getting killed that are just minding their business and doing the right thing, and they have families. Those things are really hard to even, what can you say?
How do you prepare for those? Obviously we hear the outcome, right? So when you get on and there is a repetition that occurs in terms of, the sequence of the flow of work because you've done it for so long. But you don't ever get used to these kinds of stories, this kind of news, especially coming out of this pandemic. How do you mentally prepare to go on and speak in front of so many people, knowing that literally the biggest part of your job you're not a news broadcaster. You're not here to state just the news. You're here to give a point of view. And sometimes that point of view is going to be a point of contention, especially on sensitive subjects. But how do you prepare for that?
I think the best thing to do is prepare for that, right? Like, you never want to go. First of all, you have to admit when you don't know something. So if you don't know, you don't know. You can't make things up. Sometimes people would do that and like just be like, oh, yeah, I think it was this. You can't just say anything. You do have a responsibility when you're on the radio to only say things that are true. You can't make things up because we will get sued, So there's that. So just even making sure that I do enough research, and even if there's a story, if it's something really important, I have to really research it and look at all different points of views and different articles, because you can never just read one outlet about something. One person says something, you look somewhere else, it's a whole nother story. Then there's this part that got left out of the story at this outlet. And so I just try to make sure that I do whatever I can to be able to present the story in the most fair way possible before I assess it and give my own point of view, because you are shaping how other people feel about it too.
Do you, and I guess I'm gonna dig a little deeper in this question. Do you have a routine that you do before you get on air? Like, I get what you're saying. Like, there are facts, there are things that come along with this, but is there something that you do to get your mind right so that you know that the words that are coming out are flowing? Because it's heavy. It's just it's emotionally taxing and draining.
Before we get on the air, I've already been up for 2 hours. And so in the morning, I watch the news while I'm getting ready. I always have the news on so I can see what's happening. I watch the local news, and then I also will watch like MSNBC or CNN just to see world news. And then on the way into work, I'm also like still listening and hearing what's going on and make sure that I'm like very up to date. And the night before, I also send stories in. So there's certain stories that we know are huge stories. We'll be reporting on those, breaking news, like it might be the January 6 hearings right now. And so those are
Mm-hmm.
things that I know that we're definitely going to talk about. And so I want to make sure the night before I'm already prepared. So by the time I get on the air, I've already been getting started from the night before, from when I get up in the morning. I get to work before everybody. And so that's when those stories get printed out and I look at them and then I compare them to what I already saw in the news, what I've already listened to in the car. I think a lot of people don't understand like the amount of work, that I have to do and on a daily basis, because a lot of times I don't even have time to do anything for myself, because I'm so busy,
Wow.
like preparing for work every single day. And so by the time I get to work, I've already heard a lot of these stories like over and over again, multiple times. And I always like to make sure before we go up that I just like search it to make sure because things change like
Mm.
every few minutes. And so if it's a big story, I always like Google it to see if anything happened in the past like hour that I need to update. And so, that's basically by the time I get on, I've already kind of processed it and dealt with it. And, because I do have a responsibility to make sure that I'm as accurate as possible, but also to make sure that like those important stories do get told.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that sometimes we take it for granted. Like I said, you only see what's on social or you only hear the product, the output. You don't see the preparation that goes into it. And so it's not easy because there is an emotional and, like a physical connection to what you do, right? Like you're physically performing your job every day, but there's an
Mhm.
emotional taxation that occurs, especially when the things that we talk about aren't always pretty. And then they're back to back. I mean, we have the luxury of talking about it because we're alive to tell the story,
Mhm.
but it is emotionally draining. And so I can only imagine in terms of what you do, because it's educational, it's informative, and it's entertaining, right? Like that's
Right.
what you do. It's like, it's hitting on all touch point, on all senses. So it is amazing to hear you reiterate like this concept. And I think this is a theme of our discussion is like, there is an element of preparedness that go on, whether it's in your personal, professional life or in the intersection of both those things. Like when you take it to the game of life, there's a preparedness that happens before you step out on the court, the pitch, or the field, that puts you in a position to find the win. So let's roll into this fourth quarter. The fourth quarter is always shorter because there's more life to be lived, and I feel like we're going to have more conversations. And so, in terms of what you do, and you mentioned this a lot, philanthropy is a big part of what you do. I don't know many people who do it to the level that you do it, to be honest. Seriously, because ambassador of the New York Public Library, one of the first ever, I believe for sure. You do the 5K. My girl loves to run, but Run with Ye. All of these things are example of you leading from the front, of you involving the community, but also a form of giving back, right? Like this is a physical and a mental approach to sincerely giving back. Where did this all come from? You also are part of the We Are the Family Foundation, nonprofit that powers youth around the world. But like, where does this come from? Where does this impetus to give back so much in so many areas come from?
I feel like when I first started finally making money, because I will admit that like until I had money, I didn't even, I was always struggling. Like I got to take care of myself. I don't have anything extra that I can do. But once I was in the privileged place where like, okay, I feel comfortable. I own a house and that's what really made me feel comfortable, honestly, because I used to be so concerned about like, will I ever be able to retire? Am I always going to be paying rent? Will I ever be able to own a house? That was always something that concerned me. Brooklyn's expensive. And
Mm,
so I used to be like, man, what am I going to do? And so once I bought a house, I felt like, okay, I could breathe. And now what is it that I care about that I want to make sure that I can help other people with? And so I always feel like, if I can be making money doing things, I can also donate my time and my efforts and my money, for things too, because I feel like it's a blessing to be a blessing, truthfully. And
yes.
so, one of the first things I joined was the American Foundation for the University of the West Indies. My mom is from the West Indies. Education is
Hmm.
super important to me. And so, every year I donate money. I always am like hosting or doing different things for that foundation because I get to meet some of the students that they actually help with the scholarships. And it's only $5,000 for a full year for them to go to college. And so it goes so far for them. And to meet like
Hmm.
these brilliant kids who go on to become doctors and architects and all of that. And sometimes, all they needed was some financial help. Why should that separate them from being able to get a quality education? And so that education is always something that's important to me. I have my book club that I started And I just did that because I love to read physical books and
physical books.
Audiobooks are cool too, but I just know how great it is because I also feel like there's not a great platform for authors to be able to talk about their projects and also for people to be able to connect to some of those stories. So I was actually doing the book club in person. I just did one at my coffee shop for the first time, too, after the pandemic. Well, we're still in a pandemic, but since it started, that was the first one that I've done in person, but we really did used to do them once a month. And most of the times the author would come and we had some really important conversations. And so it was like a town hall meeting. So I really appreciated and enjoyed that. I mean, we talked about everything from we did Beverly Bond came for Black Girls Rock and it was amazing. That was one of my favorite ones when she came with her book. But, we did Cecile Richards and her book, she was the president of Planned Parenthood. So she was able to come in and discuss it. So those things to me are important because look at the discussions that we're having now, and so I think we need to educate ourselves on those things so that we could be more involved and speak at it from a place of understanding. And so, it's just whatever's important to me. I like to read. I'm a big proponent of the New York Public Library. That's why that was important to me. I'm doing something there today as soon as I finish with you. I'm going there and I'm talking to the kids about entrepreneurship and I'm doing it in person and they're streaming it too. And so if there's any way that I can go to schools and talk to kids and provide any type of inspiration, those are things that really mean a lot to me. And it's never about the money. It's just about me being able to carve out time for that. And I always do.
Well, I have to say, I really appreciate you taking a seat courtside with me to have this conversation. I mean, save your money, buy a house. You definitely have done that. You're continuing the legacy of your family, giving back, definitely rooted in giving back to your neighborhood and beyond. And then this highlight of physical books, information, and access to information changes lives, which is a big part of your story. And the one that I like the most is understanding your pet peeve. Don't be late. Don't be late. Okay? Don't call her Angela Lee. It's Angela. You get in the trash.
And spell Allie's name right too. It's not A-L-L-I-E. It's with a Y. Okay. But thank you so much, Allie Love. I was really looking forward to being able to talk to you. Y'all always have me on the wood, so I enjoy being courtside with you.
Yes. No, this was honestly one of the ones I was looking forward to the most. I have so many more questions and just on a personal level. And so hopefully I can have you back, even if it's for a 15-minute segment, to dig a little deeper. I think getting to the how-to, because everyone wants to know the story. We're scratching the surface. It's a new audience. Everyone's coming in. So again, we appreciate you taking the courtside seat with me. And I look forward to potentially digging deeper with you and learning more about you.
Anytime. We'll go sit down over some coffee.
Uh-oh, here we go. Y'all get the cameras ready. Angela Yee, everyone. Thank you, Angela Yee.
Thank you.